welcome to our vlog! I'm CRISSELLE PLEÑAGO
And I'm JISSELLE and today we are going to have our series of book review entitled 1001 Nights,
and translated by Richard Burton. I am going to tackle the authors and the book background as well as the summary.
while me, I'm going to tackle about the comments on plot, the symbols, allegory and motifs, the metaphor and the similes and the irony, the imagery and the literary elements, and lastly, the conclusion. And our guest, Mary Joy, will be discussing about the 3 predictions and
The comparison and contrast with other great books reviewed.
This is the story of the Arabian Nights.
This book entitled The 1000 Night and One Night, also known by some as Alf Laila, Wa Laila, or the Arabian Nights as it is commonly called in English. The Book of the 1000 Night and a Night is one of the most popular translations of the stories in English language. A most complete list of stories in Burton's first 10 volumes and subsequent supplement 6 volumes can be found. The book contained for at least a total of 16 volumes and 311 pages. Among the best known of the 19th century translations into English is that of Sir Richard Burton. Before I will proceed with my summary, let me first introduce to you Sir Richard Francis Burton, or commonly known as Sir Richard Burton. He was a Victorian explorer, writer and translator, known for his travels in Asia and Africa. He was a prolific author, mainly on travel and ethnography. He also translated classical and Renaissance literature, and one of these was published in a complete edition, The Arabian Nights, during the year of 1885 to 1888. The story is about King Shahryar, who has been betrayed by his wife and who is off commiserating with his brother, King Shahzaman, who had suffered a similar fate himself. On their journey, they encounter a beautiful woman who is being held captive by the most fearsome genie. The woman threatens to awaken the genie and thus incur certain death upon them, unless they both have sexual relations with her. This encounter reinforces King Shahryar's loathing of women and confirms his paranoia that women are simply not to be trusted, while his brother simply swears off women completely. Our main protagonist, King Shahryar, has a more shockingly sinister plan in his mind. He rides off back to his kingdom and swears that he will wed every eligible bride in their land, only to have her executed the next morning before she has had a chance to cuckold him. As might be expected, the king soon runs out of brides to marry, and his Grand Vizier's daughter, Shahrazad, who is well known for her penchant for storytelling, decides to take it upon herself to marry the king, despite the vehement protest of her father. Shahrazad, however, has a plan herself at a certain point every night. She has her young sister, Dunyazad, come to the royal quarters and urge the new queen to entertain the king and herself with one of her famous stories. Shahrazad then puts her talent for good use, beginning a tale every night, but never ending it before daybreak, thus leaving the king enthralled and willing to spare her life one more night so he can find out what happens with the story. Hence, whenever she finishes a tale, never at daybreak, Shahrazad is sure to start another equally captivating tale, which will go on for another night or so. This continues for 1001 nights until finally the king is cured of his paranoia and decides he wants to keep his queen forever after. The 1001 Nights, or the Arabian Nights as it is also known, is constructed as a frame story, to which all the other tales are subsequently added. The tales themselves come in a very wide variety of genres, including fables, adventures, mysteries, love stories, dramas, comedians, tragedies, horror stories, poems, burlesque, and erotica. And that's it for my summary of 1001 Nights.
So for the comments on the plot, here are our comments. How does Shahryar's first wife betray him? And why does Shahrazad tell stories for 1001 Nights? And is Shahrazad the only one telling the stories for 1001 Nights? And lastly, is the Sultan fall in love with her before the 1001 Nights end?
As a guest of CRISSELLE and JISSELLE, I am sharing my thoughts about 1001 Nights. This is about Shahrazad, who is telling a story that leads to 1001 nights to save her life from being killed when morning comes. There are plenty of stories that Shahrazad have read to King Shahryar, like the tale of the trader and the genie, which is about the businessman or the merchant who's accidentally committed a crime to a genie that caused the death of the genie's son, Life, who gave him a punishment by also taking his life. But they made an agreement as the request of the merchant, who also turns out of being rescued by the three sheikhs men or three old men. The three old men who also tells a story to the genie in exchange of saving the merchant's life. These stories are based on their lives, which is a true story of the three old men that brought them to that place and met the merchant, which is the first sheikh story, or the first old man story, is about his wife who is being punished into Agazil because of what she did to his son and the mother of his son. When the wife of his son deceased, his son go to different cities and he is looking for his son. Then he met the merchant in that place. While the second sheikh story is about his brothers who is being punished in sway dogs for 10 years by the sister of his wife because they are greed and jealous of his wealth on what he have, as they also planted him of being killed to get those wealth that he owns. Now they are looking for where his sister of the sister of his wife lives, so his brother can go back to normal. That leads them to that place and met the merchant. While the three sheikh story is about his wife who became a mule because of what she did to him. The butcher's daughter led him back into normal and he asked for something that can turn his wife into something that he wants. Then this mule is wife. These stories they shared to the genie are equal to the chances of merchants to live. Because of them, the merchant got saved from the genie's punishment. Now that I have told you some previews of the story that Shahrazad have read to King Shahryar, you can see and read the story or the complete story in 1001 Nights. There are more interesting stories that Shahrazad have read to King Shahryar, and for sure you will like it. And this will These stories help King Shahryar to change his perception towards women and his decision about the imminent death of Shahrazad. And also, I will share to you the comparison and contrast of the story of 1001 Nights to other great stories, and we can see some difference and similarities towards each book.
For the literary elements, first is the genre. The genre of this novel is folklore, and the settings and context is in medieval Middle East. The narrator and point of view, Shahrazad herself is the narrator of the story and also the main protagonist of the story. For the tone and mood, it is suspenseful, adventurous, romantic, and hopeful. And the antagonist is her husband, King Shahryar. And the major conflict, there's a conflict in Shahrazad's life when she decides to woo her husband by telling him stories to save her and other girls' life, but she is unaware of the outcome. For the climax, King Shahryar falls in love with her new wife and decided not to kill her and make her queen. The foreshadowing is Shahrazad fabricates stories to tell her husband to make him curious. It foreshadows her plan to stop King Shahryar killing more innocent women. The understatement is when Shahrazad agrees to marry King Shahryar, her father tries to stop her by saying that her plan will not work out, which is an understatement because Shahrazad not only saves her life but also other women's life too. For the allusions, Shahrazad's storytelling skills alludes to her strategy for saving her life. Next is the paradox. King Shahryar believes that women are not to be trusted, but Shahrazad changes his perspective entirely. Next is for the symbols, allegory, and motifs. First is the hatred of the Sultan. This shows the extreme essence of the rejection, thus ironically described with the response of the Sultan. His actions are completely different to the person who truly knows about love. It's not saying that he deserves to be cheated, but he needs something to understand. Next is the motif of sexual violence. In Shahrazad's story, we can see common motif from absolute rape and casual violence all the way to enticement and threat, where both situations are present in her current situation. Next is the motif of murder. Shahrazad's audience was a murderous sultan with intentions to rape and kill her. To avoid this, she tells him stories with motive that she understands why the sultan needed to kill her. But her tales of true love are an invitation to see her without his blinding prejudice against women. Next is the magical cave and treasure. The mystical cave could be interpreted as a kind of sexual metaphor. Fairy elements are associated with the cave, and the treasure is fascinating but not to be disturbed. Only one man is permitted to join, and doing so is a measure of his honor. The metaphor is a pleasant reminder that men have responsibility to be honorable in their intentions to the women they have sex with. Next, for the metaphor and the singing, it's the snake. Shahryar states, "Shame, shame, I am filled with horror at this revelation of the deceit and wickedness of women. But how fortunate you were, my beloved brother, in killing your wife for betraying you. She who was the cause of your misery and malice. She was a snake hiding in the grass, waiting to strike the hand which fed her." Shahryar equates Shahzaman's wife to a snake because he deems her a traitor who deceives a husband who accorded her a good life and royalty. Her infidelity is comparable to a snake's venom, for it extremely hurts Shahzaman's ego. Next, Shahryar tossed and turned on his bed all night as if it was made of burning coals. Burning coals denote discomforts. He cannot rest because he finds his brother's assertions may be true. Next is the eyelid. It is written, Shahryar was so powerful and strong that even savage animals feared him. but at the same time he was fair, caring, and kind to his people, just as the eyelid protects the eye. And they, in turn, were loved. Next is the lion. It is written, as Mas'ud began to make love to her, the 10 black slaves mounted the girls. Shahryar almost cried out like a lion fatally wounded by an arrow to the eye. Quickly, as a bolt of lightning, he reached the garden with his sword in his hand, thirsty for revenge. The lion is emblematic of Shahryar's might and power, which is challenged when he beholds his wife getting intimate with a slave. His ego is wounded because of his status as king. He would not anticipate that his wife would cheat on him with a mere slave. Next is the irony. The irony of Shahrazad's punishment. The Sultan decided that all women are the same, so he is punishing all virgins of all people, young women or who are literally pure, and Shahrazad is one of them. She is to be executed when ironically she is the victim of rape scenario. Next is the irony of fate. Sultan hates his wife for sleeping with multiple people so much that he kills her and becomes a serial murderer. Yet, he sleeps with anyone and everyone he wants to, by force if necessary. Next is the irony of trust. Trust is rarely found in the stories, but ironically, Shahrazad's stories all point to trustworthiness as a prerequisite of love. So for the imagery, first is the imagery of capture. The Sultan is powerful and wealthy, so he has elaborate fabrics and precious metals that show Shahrazad the true luxury of his life. Next to that power, her capture is all the more final. The setting is also filled with locked doors and foiled escape plans. She is trapped in someone else's dominion. Next is the desert. In these stories, the desert is a kind of testing place. As it is true wilderness, there are very real chances that a change of weather could leave a dallying traveler in dire threats of death. The stories are dusty and often set on the edge of vast deserts where visitors arrive. She likes a man who knows his way around the wilderness. Next is the imagery of sexuality. Many of the important metaphors and images in the stories are double engenders. For instance, the feline cave of forbidden treasure is clearly a symbol for something, and sex makes sense of imagery. Portraits of betrayal. The story's various plots typically have betrayal as a central issue because Shahrazad is cleverly establishing portraits of betrayal. This is important to her survival because she is making the stories up on the fly jazz style, and the theme of betrayal is one that the Sultan himself restless to understand. By telling stories about how that difficult emotion plays out, she empathizes with him literally. She encourages him to use his imagination to find new emotional conclusions.
I will share to you the comparison and contrast of 1001 Nights into the other great books like Ramayana. Ramayana is an all-popular epic in South and Southeast Asia. It is a great epic of ancient India. It is the story of King Rama who must save his kidnapped wife, which is Sita, while in 1001 Nights, King Shahryar took a new bride every night and kill her when the morning comes, or in the next morning. In Ramayana, the four young princes were intelligent and good-natured. They loved each other like Rama and Lakshmana, which they have this special bond between them. And this special bond between Rama and Lakshmana, I can see this bond between King Shahryar and King Shahzaman. Rama and Lakshmana, who looked for Sita even though there was a danger attached on finding her. As when Shahryar and Shahzaman saw the Ifrit or genie or the genie's wife that called and want them to go closer, which was just sitting next to it. The genie was sitting next to her. They came closer as the genie's wife commanded. Even danger was attached to it when the genie woke up, and he would surely kill them both. You can see the difference between them because King Rama is rescuing his wife. That shows how he values his wife Sita in his life, while King Shahryar kills every wife he marries, as opposed to King Rama in how he treats his wife or his spouse. While the other stories that I can compare to 1001 Nights is the Gilgamesh, the mythological hero king of Uruk, and his half-wild friend Kendu. Then Gilgamesh searched for the secret of the immortality after the death of his friend, which is Kendu. Although Shahrazad is not a man and a king, they have similarities in terms of wanting to live longer because Gilgamesh makes a way and looks for immortality to live longer, while Shahrazad makes a way for her to live longer and to be saved by telling stories or telling different stories to King Shahryar. Although Gilgamesh did not accomplish on getting the immortality, he learned the importance of life and moral lesson on it toward his journey. While Shahrazad, she succeeded her mission with her younger sister Dunyazad. Her mission is to stay alive and to change King Shahryar's perception towards women. That's the comparison and contrast that I can see between 1001 Nights to the Ramayana and the Gilgamesh. Now, while reading the story, or the half of the story, I can say that I have 3 predictions on how it will end. The first one is Shahryar. Like Shahryar is the ruler of India and Persia, is the witness of his brothers and wife's infidelity. When Shahryar discovers that his wife or the queen at the beginning of the tale is being unfaithful to him, he was so hurt by that, but by their act, that he concluded that all women are infidel. He declares that all women are the same, and vows to take a new bride, and he vows to take a new bride each night, and have killed her the next morning. He had in mind that all women are the same, so his mindset stayed that way. So even if she was the daughter, or Shahrazad is the daughter of his wazir, she will not miss it. So a few more nights, Shahrazad finished a story, and King Shahrazad did not agree for another story when morning comes. Then, when morning comes, Shahrazad was killed. That's the first one, that prediction that I can tell, that I thought 1001 Nights will end. The second is that as the ruler and the king Shahryar and successor of his father, we know how wise and intelligent he is. So in the few nights that passed and up to the tale of the fisherman and the genie, he noticed that the tactics and the movements of the siblings Shahrazad and Dunyazad, who will stop when the story ends and will continue again the next night. So Shahrazad is not the only one punished by the king Shahryar, but also her younger sister, because he proved that all women are the same as his wife, and Shahrazad, they just fooling him around. That's the second. Well, the last one is, before his wife cheated on King Shahryar is a kind, caring, and good leader, and his subjects and countrymen love him dearly. He He just changed because of what his wife did to him, and his brother Shahzaman also became okay soon enough. So it's not possible that King Shahryar can still change because at first he was kind. Up to the tale of the tailor, and because of the story that Shahrazad read to King Shahryar, little by little he changed. He changed and he did fell in love with Shahrazad. And their marriage lasted long. Also, because of bringing back the former king, which is the wise and generous King Shahryar, and they helped him out. He rewarded the Shahrazad younger sister, which is Dunyazad, as well his wazir, the father of Shahrazad and Dunyazad, and his position rose in the palace. And that's what I thought the 1001 Nights will end. And that's the comparison and contrast that 1001 Nights between the Ramayana and the Gilgamesh stories. And that's my 3 predictions on how I thought the 1001 Nights will end. And that's all that I can share, and that's all my thoughts about 1001 Nights.
For the conclusion, Shahrazad is now asking King Shahryar for a blessing during this time. She had her 3 boys brought to them, whom she had borne 1,000 nights, and asked if the king would have spared them. He needed to save her as well, as they would be motherless. The king responds that because of her faithfulness, pureness, wisdom, and self-righteousness, he will spare her. Shahrazad says that he had have to forget the past. The king admits that he'd have to avoid blaming himself. Then he summons Wazir, her father, and gives him an expensive and expanded robe of honor. The town is decorated, and King Shahryar tells his brother about the proverbs, the parables, chronicles, tales, and anecdotes of Shahrazad's during the festivities. Both couples then retire to their own apartments afterwards. The father of Shahrazad became the viceroy of Samarkand, where he was made a sultan. The brothers governed in turn every day, and the people and provinces were at peace. King Shahryar summoned chronicles and copyists in due time and bids them to write with his wife everything that betided him. They write down his name and call it the Tales of Thousand Nights and the Night. And the brothers died several years later, and the kings inherited the riches. A wise ruler reads all the stories and asks people to copy and distribute them. The myths in the midst of the 1,000 Nights and a Night, which is all down has come to us, is the name of the people.